What's up, everyone? This is Lucas Ross Sports, and you're watching my Lucas Ross Sports channel. And it's time for week number 8 of Upset Alert for the 2022 college football season. Looking back to last week, we had a bunch of big games this past weekend. We had the Alabama versus Tennessee game. That ended up being an Upset Alert type game. You know, Tennessee was pretty much in control for that whole game, but Alabama came back on them, but Alabama losing in the end. Kentucky defeated Mississippi State last weekend. Michigan defeated Penn State. That game was not really considered to be an upset alert type game, but Michigan defeated them anyways. But I think this weekend is going to be pretty wide open. I think we have a bunch of games that are going to be pretty capable of, being really good. And some games really decide their conferences as well, especially coming up this weekend. But basically how this video works, I will give you 8 games, 4 games each that I think will most not likely to be an upset, and then 4 games that are most likely to be an upset. So let's get right into it here with Upset Alert for week number 8 of the 2022 college football season. We'll start with this one. It's in the Big Ten. It's a Big Ten West versus Big Ten East. It's Ohio State and Iowa. Ohio State favored by 29.5 points. This game's on Fox at noon Eastern time. And Ohio State had a bye week this past weekend, so there's really not much to talk about them, but Iowa also had a bye week this past weekend. So both teams are coming off some bye weeks, but this game right here, I think Ohio State should roll over in. So there's not really much to talk about this game other than Ohio State's been pretty much dangerous on the offensive side of the ball, and they continue to be relentless on the defensive side of the ball. But this game is on Fox at noon Eastern time. Ohio State favored by 29.5 points, and the over and under is at 49. So this game right here at noon Eastern time on Fox. Let's go to the second game now. Most not likely to be an upset, and that's Syracuse and Clemson. This game right here pretty much decides the ACC Atlantic Division. I mean, Syracuse, what a surprise they've been this year. And I knew Clemson would be, in that conversation in the college football playoff race. If you look at both of these teams, they're not really similar to each other, but, Clemson, I think, has the better defense. Syracuse might have the better offense, but this is a home game for Clemson. This game's at noon Eastern time on ABC. It's a home game for Clemson, and surprisingly, Clemson is favored by 13.5 points. And I think, I think it should be lesser than that. I think, overall, this will be a really close game. But I think they decide to go with Clemson as the big double-digit favorite because it is a home game for Clemson. It's in Death Valley, a tough place to play for Syracuse here. But I think this is going to be a good one. I think both teams are pretty, good on both sides of the ball. But, it just comes down to who has the best defense and also the best offense here. I mean, Clemson's offense really had a tough one against Florida State, but I think, they're capable of, winning this game by more than 13.5 points. But I'm calling this one, maybe an upset alert type game. But it's in the most not likely to be an upset alert category. So I'm going to say that Clemson, would win this game, though, if this game were a, close one. So I'm going to say that Clemson wins this one if I was going to make a prediction on this one. This game's on ABC, noon Eastern time, so back-to-back noon games. Let's go to the third game now that is most not likely to be an upset, and it's in the SEC. It's Alabama and Mississippi State. Two of these teams came off some, tough losses this past weekend. We'll start with Mississippi State first. They lost to Kentucky on the road. Mississippi State could have won that game. The offense just could not move the football on the Kentucky defense. Kentucky's defense, I think, played pretty well in order to slow down that Mississippi State offense. And Will Rogers kind of struggled. He kind of struggled to, get past the ball against Kentucky. But things are going to get a little harder for Will Rogers when they play Alabama on the road this Saturday. This game's at 7 o'clock Eastern time, so it's a night game on ESPN. Alabama favored by 21 points in this game, so about a 3-touchdown, favorite in this one. I think it's a lot closer than that, though. I think it's kind of similar to the Clemson and Syracuse game, probably 13.5 points or somewhere in that range. Alabama, though, they came off a heartbreaker to Tennessee this past Saturday. I mean, we didn't think Alabama would lose a regular season game to an SEC East opponent, so both of these teams are coming off some, tough games against SEC East opponents, and it looks like the SEC East has taken over the SEC West this year. I mean, Alabama could still win the West, but, it seems like the SEC East has been having a better, division than the Western Division. If Mississippi State wins this game, the SEC West is wide open, but if Alabama wins it, they could pretty much, win out their games and maybe finish out 11-1. But it's Mississippi State versus Alabama, the third game here that is most not likely to be an upset. Let's go to the last game that is most not likely to be an upset. That's Boston College and Wake Forest. Wake Forest had a bye week this past weekend. So did Boston College. Both of these teams are coming off some bye weeks. This game's at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on the ACC network. And Wake Forest is favored by 20.5 points. The over and under is at 61. I mean, I don't really see this game being all that close. Boston College has had a pretty tough season. I think it's just because of the schedule. I mean, the schedule is pretty tough for Boston College. And you look at, this team, they've been kind of falling apart. They at least got one win in the ACC, but it's just not been pretty good of a season for the Eagles. Wake Forest, on the other hand, they're number 13 in the AP poll. They had a bye week this past week. I mean, I would probably, put Wake Forest in that conversation for the ACC Atlantic Division, but I don't think it will be enough. I think Wake Forest, will come up short of an ACC championship for back-to-back years. I mean, Wake Forest, you look at them, they've lost to Clemson already, but they haven't really played anybody really that tough in a while, so I mean, it's been pretty tough, for Wake Forest to, they don't really have the schedule to really go to the ACC championship either. So they pretty much already lost to Clemson. If Clemson loses, though, I would probably put Wake Forest back in that conversation. But this game right here, 3:30 Eastern time, this Saturday, going to be not really a close game, I don't think, for this game right here because Boston College has not been all that great this year. All right, let's go to the games now that are most likely to be an upset alert type game. And these are games that are going to be really interesting. Let's go to the first game here. It's in the SEC Conference. It's Ole Miss and LSU. Ole Miss heading on the road this Saturday, undefeated, playing LSU here on the road. This game's at 3:30 p.m. It's on CBS. It's in Baton Rouge. LSU favored by 1.5 points. I mean, I'm really surprised that LSU is the favorite going into this game, because I thought, this would be probably Ole Miss favored by 6.5 points or something like that in that range. But it's LSU. LSU is favored in this game. They're, the over and under is at 65.5 or 66.5. So LSU, I mean, they're coming off a big-time win on the road at Florida this past Saturday. I mean, could they do it again? Could they pull off a big-time win here this time against Ole Miss? I mean, the offense has been pretty explosive for Ole Miss this year. Defensively, they've been a lot better. I mean, the first time, in his first two seasons, Ole Miss defense was really kind of falling apart. And then, Lane Kiffin has gotten this team a lot better. Ole Miss, though, they still have to play, Alabama this year. But they got to get past this LSU team first, which is going to be a pretty tough road game. I mean, this LSU team, ever since they lost, to Florida State early in the season, they've gotten better. They've been the underdogs in, games this year. I think this is a good underdog LSU team. I think, they're really capable of, maybe pulling off an upset here. I mean, potentially. I mean, that could happen this Saturday. This game's at 3:30, though, on CBS. It's a home game for LSU. That is my first upset alert type game. The second game here is UCLA and Oregon. This is in the Pac-12. UCLA and Oregon both coming off some bye weeks this past weekend. This game's on Fox at 3:30. Oregon favored by 6 points here in this game, and the over and under is at 69.5. So Oregon, like I said, has gotten better ever since losing to Georgia in the season opener. And UCLA's has, UCLA, you look at them, they've upsetted some great opponents. Of course, it was Washington first at home, and then they beat Utah at home. So, I mean, they've had some really good quality wins. I mean, they are undefeated. Both of these teams, though, are undefeated in the Pac-12 conference. I think this game really decides who is the top team out of the Pac-12. If UCLA wins, they automatically are the top team. If Oregon wins, they are the top team. But like I said, there are 4 teams battling for that top spot. I mean, you got UCLA, Oregon, USC, and Utah battling for that top spot in the Pac-12 conference. I mean, any of these teams can make it in the Pac-12 championship, but like I said, Oregon and UCLA is going to be a pretty good matchup here. I mean, Oregon, I think, should be favored because they're coming off, big wins, ever since losing to that Georgia game. I mean, they've gotten better. Let's be honest, they've gotten better. But both of these teams are pretty even. If I was going to make a prediction, though, I would choose Oregon just because of the home field advantage. It's a 50-50 game, and I'm going to say that Oregon and the Ducks will win it. So I think Bo Nix will really step up here in this game. So I'm going to say that Oregon beats UCLA. And again, this game's at 3:30 Eastern time on Fox, and Oregon is favored by 6. Let's go to the third game now. It's the Big 12. It's Texas and Oklahoma State. Texas coming off a, not an easy win against, Iowa State this past weekend. I mean, it was like a, trap-type game for Texas, but they were still able to prevail at home in that game. Oklahoma State coming off that loss to TCU this past weekend in double overtime. I think both of these teams are pretty much hungry for a win in the Big 12 Conference. 3:30 game here on ABC. Texas favored by 6.5 points, which is pretty surprising to me considering it is a road game. I think they like Texas defense a lot in this game, and I think that's what's going to win Texas the game if they are favored by 6.5 points. The over and under is at 61 here. Oklahoma State, they were favored last week's game against TCU. Maybe TCU was favored, but I had them on upset alert last weekend, and they're back on this list once again this weekend. I mean, they could still make the Big 12 championship. I'm not really counting out this team. I think anybody can win the Big 12 conference. I mean, TCU, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Texas are all fighting for that spot. I think we could pretty much say Kansas is out of that spot, and all these other teams in the Big 12, like Oklahoma, is out of that race. So any of these 4 teams can win it, but Texas and Oklahoma State going to be a good one here. I want to choose Texas in this game. I think Texas has what it takes to pull off an upset on the road this Saturday against Oklahoma State. Like I said, 3:30 p.m. ABC type game, so it's going to be a really good one here. Let's go to the last game now that is most likely to be an upset, and it's still in the Big 12. It's Kansas State and TCU. Both teams are undefeated in the Big 12 conference, play. This game's at 8 o'clock Eastern, a late night game here. And surprisingly, this game is on Fox Sports 1. It's not on, ESPN or, any other coverage down there. This game's on Fox Sports 1. And I'm kind of really surprised that it's not on a big, TV network. But Kansas State and TCU, I think this game really decides who is the top team out of the Big 12. I think I said last week that I think TCU or Oklahoma State, decides who is the top team out of the Big 12. But I think it's this game right here. Kansas State versus TCU. TCU is favored by 3.5 points in this game, so about a field goal. I mean, the over and under is at 54, so I'm calling this one a 50-50 game between the Horned Frogs and the Wildcats. Kansas State, they're coming off a bye week this past weekend. I mean, they've had some big wins this year, against Oklahoma. That was pretty much the big one there. TCU had a big one against Kansas 2 weeks ago, and then this past weekend against, Oklahoma State in double overtime. So both of these teams are hungry for a win. I mean, if, TCU wins, they are the top team in the Big 12. Kansas State is the top team in the Big 12 that they win. So, but looking at both of these teams are pretty even. It's a tough one to call, but I like to go with home field advantage if it's really tough one to call. I'm going to say that TCU defeats Kansas State. I think they're pretty much at the top of the Big 12 and perhaps remain undefeated. And they're 6-0. I mean, it's really surprising that we've seen TCU, at 6-0 to start out the year. Kansas State, though, watch out for them. Watch out for them in this game right here this Saturday. Those are my upset alert type games for week number 8 of the 2022 college football season. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. And again, subscribe to this channel if you are new to this channel. We are trying to get the subscribers up and also try to grow this channel out. And stay tuned here for more on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.